Great, we are recording. I'm going to share my screen so that everybody can see, hopefully, my desktop, or at least my slides. So thank you for joining me here today. Today we are going to be looking at the process of creating lessons for Learn WordPress. Um, I want to mention up front, very, very importantly, I'm not going to be showing you how to physically edit a video. Nilo, Nilo says now that I'm recording, you can leave. It's hilarious. Um, I'm not going to be diving into the actual process of recording and editing a video because that is a whole different topic of conversation. So if you're here today for that, unfortunately, I'm going to share some tips and tricks and I'm going to share some software that I recommend, but I won't actually be showing you how to record and edit a video. The purpose of today's workshop is to take you through the process of finding a lesson in a course that needs to be created, what the steps are to follow um, based on the Learn WordPress handbook, how you put together a script, how you get it out for review, and kind of the process that I followed when I was busy creating the course lessons for the different learning pathways. So those are the goals for today. So if that's what you're here for, great. If you're not, you're welcome to hang out as well. While you're joining, please do in the chat, let us know where you're joining us from in the world. I always like to know where everybody's coming in from while I do my very quick introductions. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jonathan. I live in Cape Town in South Africa. I am a developer advocate at Automatic. So that means I generally work with all kinds of developer things, creating tutorials, creating lessons, doing workshops like this. Um, and you can find all my social medias and everywhere where I am online at my website at jonathanbossinger.com. It's also where I regularly blog. I see we've got Rico from Switzerland, Nilo from Spain, Chris from Spain, welcome. Jeff from Los Angeles, welcome. Quite early in the morning for you there, Jeff. We've got Muhibul from Bangladesh, welcome Muhibul. Sabir from Dhaka, Bangladesh. Vishal says Namaste from Mumbai, welcome. Phil from Vancouver, Canada. Chris says Spain, Gran Canaria. Okay. We've got Ramahat from Indonesia, Eric from USA, Florida. Also early in the morning for you, Eric. I would like to give a warm welcome to Jeff all the way from Los Angeles. I was in Portland recently, so I know it's 9 hours difference there. We got Valda from New England, welcome. Awesome. So we've got folks from all over the world here today. Excellent stuff. One of the things I love about 7 a.m. right now, Jeff says, one of the things I love about the WordPress community is how global we are. Okay, so today is a brief guide into creating course lesson content. We're going to kind of cover everything from where the information sits, where you can find information. We're going to talk through some processes of how to create lesson content. As mentioned, I'm not going to be diving deep into the actual recording and editing process, but I will cover some tips and tricks there as well, some software that I recommend if you need software, if you don't have it already. And then there will be time for questions. So we'll dive into those as we go through. Vishal says, nice to see you again, connecting here after the cohort in 2023. Oh, awesome. Welcome, Vishal. Glad to have you join us. Okay, first of all, I just want to check. I want to make sure that everybody can see the slide. So make sure you can see my screen. I think I need to actually just change one thing on my monitor. I usually have it running at a higher resolution or a lower resolution, should I say. Sorry, 1 second. I think I've just balked it here. Not that one, that one. There we go. So if you can't see my screen, and if you can't read the text, please let me know and I'll zoom things in, but it should be on screen. We are presenting this in focus mode in my slides. So that means join the Zoom with your video off. You're welcome to enable your video if you would like to. You're welcome to leave it off. That's totally fine. We present these workshops in focus mode because there were some issues with Zoom bombing a while ago, but that doesn't seem to happen anymore. But that's how we start these sessions. You're welcome to ask questions at any point in time in the workshop. You're welcome to post your questions in the chat. You're welcome to unmute and use your mic to ask questions if you prefer that. The only thing that I do ask is if your question doesn't specifically have a relation to something that we're talking about at that moment, I do allow for breaks, so please keep those kind of questions for those breaks. Otherwise, feel free to pop them through in the chat and I'll answer them as we go. I often will grab a sip of water just to kind of get myself to break and take a breath. And so that's a good time for me to look at questions. If I start rushing off too fast, please do let me know, but we aren't going to be doing anything heavily technical today, so we shouldn't have a problem. This is being recorded, so this will be posted to WordPress TV afterwards. So if you want to watch this recording there, you can do. The slides will also be included in that. So if you want to get a hold of the slides, they will be included in the recording. And if you're looking for any more courses, lessons, and workshops, please do visit learn.wordpress.org. Everything is available there. And then last but not least, where to find the last but not least, our learning outcomes from today. I'm rushing off ahead of myself here. We're going to be diving into where to find lessons that need to be created. That's kind of one of the biggest things that I think people struggle with. Then we're going to chat a little bit about researching lesson content and where you can find information. Then we'll talk about my process of writing a lesson script. It's not the only way to do it, but it's the way that I do it. I'll also share some tips and some ways that other people do it. Then we'll talk about the script review process, which is an optional process, but I do actually recommend it if you're working with a few contributors on something, and we'll talk about what that looks like. Then we'll spend some time on creating the actual lesson video, and then we'll go through the process of how to post that video for review internally. And then finally, how to publish your lesson, how to get the content out there, and how to add it to the Learn WordPress website. Okay. At this point in time, does anybody have any questions before we move on? Please do let me know while I take my break and sip of water. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'm going to just dive straight in. And on the last slide, I have all of my resources. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all these links now, and I'm going to paste them into the chat so that you have them readily available, but I'll share them individually as we go along as well. Oh dear, they don't paste very well in the chat, so I apologize. No, that looks terrible. Okay, I'll have to do them one by one. The Zoom chat seems to go wonky for some reason. All right, let's start off with the first one. So the first place you want to get started when you are looking for content to create, everything that the training team works on for the Learn WordPress website is managed in the GitHub repository. Now, the GitHub repository contains the code that powers the Learn WordPress website, but we also use the GitHub issues to manage the content that we create. It was a decision that was made before I joined the training team. There are pros and cons to it, but the nice thing is it's a public space where everything can be tracked, everything can be followed, so it makes it easy for folks to work on these things collaboratively. So you will need a GitHub account to be able to work on this if you don't already have one. It's pretty easy to sign up for one. You just need an email address. And then all of the content-related issues are managed in the GitHub issue section. Labels that we use. So you can use the labels dropdown and you can filter by all content related labels. So it's a translation item, a feedback item, it's published, whatever the case may be. But there's actually a slightly easier way. We have a bunch of projects set up. So this is a projects view that GitHub allows you to use for project management. And we have a Learn WordPress content development project. If you click on that project, you will see that all of the content related issues are nicely gathered into that space, and you can go off and create content from there. Now, most of the content in these projects, or this project, should I say, are sort of just general content ideas that people are working on. There are some old ones, some new ones. The CSX Flexbox workshop, for example, was created in 2022. So a lot of this is old stuff that may or may not still need to be created. More recently, sorry, let me just go back one step here. More recently, we launched what we call the Learning Pathways project. So the Learning Pathways project was a twofold project. Number one, we wanted to redesign the Learn WordPress website. And it's basically, let me find the link here. It's basically the look and feel that you see on Learn WordPress now. So it's the refreshed design with this focus on the learning pathways. So using WordPress, developing with WordPress, designing with WordPress. Courses are sort of the primary way that folks get involved. all of the nicer thumbnails. If you've been involved in a thumbnail project, you will remember creating all the thumbnails. So that was one part of that project. The other part was creating these learning pathway courses. So if you go to Learn WordPress and you click on, for example, Start Using WordPress, this is a learning pathway for users. And within that learning pathway, there are 3 courses. There is the beginner WordPress user course, intermediate WordPress user, and advanced WordPress user. So those are the 3 courses that were planned for this learning pathway. They are completed. But at the moment, there are still 2 other learning pathways that need completion. The one is the Design with WordPress learning pathway. You'll see there is a beginner WordPress designer course, but there are 2 other courses that were planned that need to be created. And there is the Develop with WordPress learning pathway, which also had 3 courses planned: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Intermediate is, I think, intermediate theme developer. Sorry, actually, there's 4 courses now that I think about it. It was beginner WordPress developer, intermediate theme and plugin developer, and then advanced developer. So those are the courses that are still, they need folks to come along and create content for them. So we're going to be focusing on how to access the issues for those courses in the session, because those are the ones that are sort of higher priority. Okay, so getting back to the board, I'm going to copy the board link into the chat as well so that you have that. You will see that under the content creation section, there are the different courses that still need to be created. So intermediate plugin developer is there, advanced developer is there, intermediate designer is there, and advanced designer is there. So if you are somebody who wants to create content for developers, pick developer ones. If you're somebody who wants to create content for designers, pick the 2 designer ones. If you feel that the beginner user, or at least any of the user courses, should I say, are missing lessons, you can also create issues for lessons for those courses. And we'll talk about that in a second as well. So it doesn't mean just because you're not a designer and you're not a developer, you can't create lessons to Learn WordPress. But right now, the immediate requirement or the need is in those spaces. Okay, so let's say I'm a designer and I want to have a look and see what lessons need to be created for the, let's say, intermediate designer course. I can click on that link and it'll open up the issue. And it'll show me all of the lessons that were planned for this course. So you'll see what we did was we set them up by module. The modules have an objective. The objective has different lessons. You'll notice that within GitHub, you can mark issues as either completed or in progress. So that's what these little icons mean. So that one means it's done. This one means it's still in progress. And then at the bottom here, I think some of these, yeah, all of these are either done or in progress. If we have a look at, for example, the advanced designer, we'll probably see that they're all still needing to be done. Actually, I think the green, let me just verify this. I think the green dot actually means needing to be done. Yes, that's right. Sorry. The circle with the green dot means needing to be done, not in progress. I apologize. So it's either needing to be done, which is in green, or the purple check, which is meaning it's done. So that's where you can start. So look through the issues for either of these 2 courses, see if there are still items that need to be done. I just want to have a look at this quickly. It's been a while since I've looked at these. Yeah, this one is content published, so that means it has been done. And find ones that need to be created, and then you can go ahead and start creating them. One thing that we did start doing, and I noticed some of these aren't checked off, but we started checking off these check items. So it would be helpful if somebody could come along and triage some of these issues and check if something has been published, but to mark it off. But I'm going to now have a look at this Watch a Pro theme designer build a block theme from start to finish. So if I open that issue, you'll see there is no description provided. Okay, I have no idea what the plan was for this content. So the first thing I will do is I will contact Wes and I'll say, hey, Wes, you created this issue. I'll find him in Slack. I'll say, hey, you created this issue. What did you envision for this lesson? So one way I can do it is I can ping him in Slack. The other way I can do it is I can leave a comment on this issue and I can say, hey, what were you thinking of what this lesson would look like? And hopefully he will come back and say, okay, this is the idea. I wanted somebody to be able to, for example, sit down, design a theme, start to finish, whatever the case is. And you can then use that information to decide what should be included in that lesson. If he doesn't get back to you, you could then, if you are a pro theme designer, you could look at, well, what would I put in a lesson like this? And you can start putting some descriptions and some things together. If you aren't a pro theme designer, then the next step is to start reaching out to somebody that we would call a subject matter expert. So I want to show you, I think we have this in the handbook. I'm going to share the link to the handbook with you in the chat as well. So let's pop that in there. And I'm going to go SME, subject matter expert. I think we have a handbook page on SMEs. We did at one point. Let's go subject matter onboarding. So here we go. So generally speaking, a subject matter expert is someone who has extensive knowledge in a particular field. So ideally, if you were going to be working on, for example, the theme designer lesson, then a good place to start might be to reach out to the theme review channel, because there are probably some theme designers there, and try and work with one of them and say, hey, this is the lesson. This is what information I was able to get from this. This is what we want to put together. Your thoughts, and see if you can get some information from them to be able to put this lesson together. Sometimes you might hit a bit of a roadblock. You might find, okay, I can't find a subject matter expert to work with. I don't know somebody who can help me put together the lesson, and that's okay. My recommendation then would leave this lesson and maybe find one that is more in line with what you are comfortable with or what I'm working with. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to the projects, and I'm going to go to the plugin developer course, for example. So I am a developer myself. So if I was looking at this side in the plugin course, and I would say, okay, fine, what lessons need to be created? Okay, there's some modules here that need working on. There's one about publishing plugins. Okay, that's that maybe I know something about. Oh, look, there's a lesson about the WordPress.org plugin directory. I see there's someone's name attached. It looks like they're working on it. So let me go to planning and submitting plugins. Let me click on that and see what that's all about. So, okay, again, there's no information here, so it doesn't really help much. So if you were the person doing this, you could reach out to the sponsorship character. Hey, Jonathan, what did you have in mind? So if you come across issues around this, you're welcome to ping me in Slack. You're welcome to ask me what I had in mind. And the answer that I would give back to you is I would say to you, look at the documentation. And you'll see in my list of resources, I have links to the documentation. So for the developer one, for example, I would go to developer.wordpress.org. And I would look at the plugin developer documentation. And probably what I end up doing is I will end up sending you a link. And I will say, this is the documentation. I'm going to check quickly and submitting. There we go. This is the documentation piece that gave me the idea for this lesson. So generally, when I create lessons, I try and link them to a piece of documentation or to a few pieces of documentation. And I would send to you, this is the idea. So read through this documentation and then create a lesson based on what you find in the documentation and how that whole process. Okay. So the first step is reaching out to determine what needs to be part of the lesson, what documentation is relevant to the lesson. I would like to show you a couple of existing issues. So let's go to this project here, and I'm going to take you. Let me find a lesson issue that is closed in this one. So we have advanced hooks, for example. So let's start with hooks. Here's the custom hooks list. This lesson has been published on Learn WordPress. So what we try and do is we try and then add details to the issue. So there's a content type, it's a lesson. We want to give it a title. We want to give it a brief description so that we know what it's all about, the audience and the experience level. Then I try and include prerequisites. So I try and include, for this lesson, what should the learner have learned somewhere else? Because if we don't do that, then we don't know what we expect the learner to know by the time of this lesson if they're working through the course. And we assume they know nothing, and then we have to explain everything. So for example, for custom hooks, I assume that a learner has gone through the beginner WordPress developer, very specifically modules 1 to 4, module 5, and module 6. So they know what hooks are, they know how to use hooks, they know how to use plugins. Now I'm specifically focusing on creating custom hooks. Then it's a good idea to add some learning objectives. So you want to decide what are you going to focus on in this lesson. Just like I did in the slides, we had some learning outcomes. You want to put together some learning objectives to say, well, this is what the lesson is going to entail. This is what we're going to focus on teaching folks. And these are the things that they'll be able to do once they finish this lesson. Then I like to add related resources and other, usually the documentation that I'm linking to, and then any other documentation anywhere else. So if it's about custom hooks and there's a blog post somewhere that I read about that relates to custom hooks or some example code somewhere else, I will link all of those things through. Now, if you have a look at the handbook, and I'm going to pop this link. I didn't share it earlier. We have a training team handbook section entirely dedicated to creating lessons. Okay, so I'm going to open that up now on screen. And we wrote this with lessons for courses in mind when we launched the WordPress project. So there are two lesson creation processes. Now, generally, if you're working on lessons that have been created, this is done. But this is the process you can do if you want to create a new lesson issue. So you go through, you go to the GitHub issue template, you fill in the template, and there's certain things, steps that you follow. And then the lesson needs to be vetted, ideally by somebody who is a subject matter expert. And they will go, well, yes, this lesson makes sense. It has, let me go back to the lesson. It has good details. It suitable prerequisites that make sense. It has good learning objectives. It has good related resources and other notes. Great, we can go ahead and create this lesson. The other option is when you're somebody who's a more experienced author. So this is generally when somebody is both a lesson content creator and a subject matter expert. So for example, myself, I'm an experienced content creator, but I also am a developer. So any developer related lessons, I can kind of be my own subject matter expert. So then there's a process I follow to go through. And usually what I will do up front is I will start putting together all this information myself and then just ask someone to review it. So that's kind of step one, making sure that there's an issue that exists, making sure it has all of these lesson related details so that it makes sense as a lesson, making sure someone has just checked it and reviewed it and gone, yes, this is happy, and we can go ahead and read this. So I'm going to very quickly just go through this lesson creation process just to show you what it looks like. But you click on this content development GitHub issue link. It'll take you to this create a new issue page. You choose the content development general for now, and it fills in the template for you. You then give it a title. So I'm going to say my test lesson, and you fill the information. I'm going to fill in all the information now, but I'm going to create this lesson. Sorry, this issue. What you'll notice it then does is it adds the awaiting triage label and the content needs SME label. So it needs a subject matter expert to verify this information. The training team will then pick this up. Somebody will triage it. They will label it accordingly. Will remove the awaiting triage label. They will ideally ping a subject matter expert and say, hey, is this information making sense? The person will check it out. Yes, looks good. And then it will move from the awaiting triage stage into the awaiting vetting stage for it to be vetted. And then from there, it'll go from topic vetting into a different project. It'll go from topic vetting into, I think it's content development. Did it not do that? Yes, it did. Okay, there we go. And then it'll be in the ready to create status. So now you can go ahead and start creating your lesson. Okay. So the thing that I mentioned in my learning outcomes was it's a good idea to write a lesson script. Okay. Before we do the lesson script, I just want to take a pause and make sure that there are no questions about the process of finding issues, creating issues for lessons, or anything like that. So if you have any questions, now would be a great time to ask them while I grab a sip of water. All right. We don't seem to have any lessons, any questions. So what I want to share with you now, getting back to the handbook. In the lesson handbook, I want to jump down to creating lessons. If you go to the creating a lesson page, you will see there's a section called what do other content creators do? So what happened here was a number of folks would reach out to myself and Wes because we were creating a lot of the content at the time to say, well, what does your process look like? So we kind of documented our process. My process and Wes's process is very different in a lot of ways and very similar in a lot of ways. If you read through those lists, my process is I do research up front, and then I write out a full script as if I am talking to the camera. And if you have a look at some of my older lessons, I'm going to find, I think this one was one that, no, this one was one that someone else worked on. So I'm going to go and look at some older lessons very quickly. I'll share the link with you in a second. Just give me 2 minutes here. I'm going to go is closed, and I'm going to say author is me. And I'm going to find block creations is probably custom hooks is probably a good idea. No, custom hooks is the one we just looked at. I think they were older than that. Just want to show you, maybe this one is a good one. Yeah, this is probably good. So here you'll see details, learning objectives, bunch of related documents. And then what I do is I create a script. So this is the script file itself. I create my scripts in Markdown that I store in a GitHub repository somewhere. You don't have to do it that way. You can do it in a in a Google document as well if you want. I don't mind. But I write my script as if that's how I'm going to speak it when I record it, because that's literally what I do. I have my script on one screen, I have my recording in front of me, and then I read through the script while I'm doing whatever I'm doing. That's my process. Wes's process is slightly different. What he does is he calls it building his projects from the bottom up. So he'll add one or two, so he'll make a bunch of notes. He won't have like a full script. He'll have some notes that he'll turn into a script, but often it's not a fully fledged, like exactly the words he's going to say. He says, he says, in general, I won't type out the script for demonstrations as I talk students through what's happening on screen, but we'll prepare bullet points of all the steps that need to be followed. So when it comes to the demonstration part, he has a teaching background. So he's more comfortable in just kind of having some bullet points. I need to do this, then I need to do that, then I need to do that, and then talking through it while he does it. I need to have a full script. I need to have exactly the words that I'm going to say, because if I don't, then I'll fumble over my words like you've heard me do in this workshop. I'll have to do a bunch of different recordings. So I have the exact words. You'll see I talk about it here, planning the script and how I do it exactly step by step by step, so that when I'm recording, I'm with the script. Then, once you have either your script or your notes, and I mentioned this in the learning outcomes, this is optional. You don't have to do this. But in your early days of creating lessons, I do recommend it. It's a good idea to share the script. I'm wondering where I did it now. I had an issue open here. Maybe I missed it. Yes, here we go. It's a good idea to share this in the issue that you're working on, because then you can ask for feedback. You can say, hey, folks, I put my script together. Would the subject matter expert who reviewed the original lesson content, at least the details and all that, be prepared to review the script? Because that helps you check if you've got any issues with your script. There's nothing worse than recording the video and then somebody picks up an error that you missed. So it's a good idea to share the script early in the issue if you want. What I do recommend to folks to do is to then share that in the training team Slack channel and say, hey, folks, I'm working on this lesson. Here is my script. If anybody has time to review it, please do so. And if you get someone to review it, that's great, because then they can give you some feedback. Okay. Once you're happy your script is done, now you can start recording. And again, both Wes and I have documented our recording process. They're both slightly different. We use different software. We both use two screens. So one screen for recording, one screen for notes and scripts and that kind of thing. I don't think it would be possible to do it with one screen, because if you need to have notes somewhere and you're recording, that might work out as tricky. But I'm sure some folks can do it. I think I remember Wes very early on, he actually just used to have an A4 notebook that he had propped up next to him. He had notes written down there. So that's one way you can do it. But whatever works for you is kind of the way you should do it. In terms of the actual software, now there are many different tools out there. But I wrote a blog post. I'm going to share this link. Sorry, I've just bulked my slides. I wrote a blog post a while ago of two pieces of software that I recommend folks to use when they're recording content. They are both free, they're both open source, and they both work really, really well. The first one is OBS Studio. Now, most people OBS Studio as a piece of software for streaming, but it also works well for recording. So I'm going to open up my OBS quickly so you can see what it looks like. It does sometimes take a while to load. You can also use things like Zoom. You can use whatever the default record software is on your operating system. It doesn't matter what you use. for one reasons I like OBS, and it's taking a while here, is that I can record the video, I can pause, I can, use virtual cameras, that kind of thing. You'll see there's a little video of me on screen over here. You essentially need to set up your capture devices. So you set up your screen. I'm going to switch it on, and it's that thing where it just, oh no, it's not going to zoom in. It's just showing the screen there. It can show the mouse as you're moving around. And then you can just hit record. You can record your sections. You can pause. It has a little icon hits in your taskbar, so you can start recording there. And then I'm going to just record for 5 seconds. And the great thing about it is you can do all kinds of transitions and fades and fun things with it. Once you have recorded, you need to do something called remuxing your video. So what it does is it records, by default, it records in an MKV file. And to edit the software, you often will need to use an MP4 file. So you generally need to just remux the MKV to MP4, which you'll see it'll do there now, depending on the software that you use. Then in terms of the actual editing software, there are obviously loads of pages out there. There's Camtasia, there's Loom, there's all kinds of other things. But there's also an open source piece of software I recommend called Shotcut. I don't think I have Shotcut installed here because I'm using some right now. But I actually used OBS and Shotcut to record and edit the videos that I submitted when I did my trial with Automatic. And you can get some really, really good recording it using Shotcut. They say that I uploaded to YouTube. It's got some transitions, some very basic stuff, but it has basically all of the functionality that most paid tools have. There is a slight learning curve, but it has a great set of tutorial videos, online documentation, and resources. So if you're looking for software that's free and open source and easy to use, easy-ish to use, you can check out Shotcut. Okay. The other thing I forgot to share with you is the script writing process. So this is another link that I shared publicly on my blog. I would recommend, if you can, if you have access to AI tools, to use them to generate your first version of your script. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to require some editing, but it's a lot quicker than having to write the whole thing yourself. So I use a tool called Perplexity. There's loads of them out there, OpenAI's, ChatGPT, whatever the case may be. I will feed it the documentation that I'm working with. I will give it a good prompt. So I don't know if I have it open here in my PHP Storm, but I'll actually generate a prompt and I'll say things like, you are a technical writer or a technical script writer writing a lesson about this. Make sure it is technically correct, follows certain guidelines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then I'll generate the first version of my script using AI tools. Then I will go through that document and I will make edits and I will clean up the language, or I might share it with somebody to help me clean up the language if English isn't my first language. It is, but in case it isn't. But I do use it for my first version because it gets a lot of this sort of initial work out of the way, the wordsmithing and that kind of thing. All right, once you have your script and you have you've then recorded and edited your video, the next step is to upload the video to the GitHub issue. So I want to see if I can find, this is a situation where I was actually working with another video creator. So I created the script and I just recorded my voice and he then put the video together. I'm going to try and find it here. Here we go. So he added the video there for me to review. Rico says, could you share the prompt that you used with us? I can share it with you. I just need to find it. So what I will do, Rico, and everybody else who's on the call, there is, let me just find it here quickly. In the meetup event for today, there is a GitHub link for the workshop. Here it is. I'm going to share this in the chat so you can copy it now. And what I will do is after the call, I have a meeting after the call, but after that meeting, I'll go and find that prompt that I'm using and I'll share it in the GitHub issue. So you can find it there and you can then use it from there. I can't remember which repository it's in, and I don't want to go digging for it now. I don't want to waste everybody's time, but I will share that after the call. So thank you for the question. All right. Let's go to where we were. Here we go. Yes. So the next step is to upload the video somewhere. Now, you can do this in one of a number of ways. You can upload it to something like Google Drive, which is what Agilio did in this instance. So here it's on Google Drive. I can download it, watch it, whatever the case may be. You can also upload it as an embedded video to GitHub. As long as the video is, I think, less than 100 megs in size. If you are looking for a tool to down code videos so that they're a smaller size, you can use something like Handbrake. Handbrake is another open source tool. It's available across all platforms. You can take any large video size, like a 4K video, a 1080p video, and down code it to a smaller size. So it's great for sharing for review. If you can record at 4K, if you have the technology and the tools available to that, I do recommend recording at 4K for the full video. But sharing for the review, you can downcode it to a smaller size or whatever the case may be. So I recommend checking out Handbrake. And then I also recommend sharing in the training team Slack to say, hey, folks, I've created this video. Can someone review it? Because there's nothing worse than putting your video out there and nobody's checking it out and telling you if you've missed anything. So if not in, I'm going to open it up on screen so that everybody can see it. But I first want to make sure not in any kind of work instances. If you're not in the training team Slack, I see Valda there has posted a message. Mohib will share the workshop earlier. Please do join the training team channel in the WordPress, in the Making WordPress Slack. It's a great way to get feedback from other training team contributors. It's a great way to find out information from folks. It's a great way to ask questions, great place to ask questions. And it's the perfect place to say, hey, this video is available for review. Please give it a review. If we go back to the handbook page, and I'm not trying to spend too much time on the handbook pages because there's a lot of information there and we would take forever to get through it today. But the handbook page does talk about a review period. So if we go down to lesson review, you'll see there's everything: creation process, lesson task, creating a lesson, lesson review. We generally recommend that a lesson be left open for review for a minimum of 2 weeks. So that just gives everybody enough time to find a good gap to be able to review the video. So what I suggest you do is when you post about it in Slack, just say, hey, folks, I've just posted this video for review. Today's date is the 18th of September. 2 weeks from today would be the 3rd of October, the 2nd of October. So in your message, say, please leave your review feedback by the 2nd of October. And then folks can come and review and they can leave their feedback there. If we get to the 2nd of October and nobody has reviewed video, then it is generally accepted that you can go ahead and publish. Okay. If you're not sure and you want to get someone to review, reach out to the training team reps, Mohibul and Radik, and Sumit as a training team rep as well, and say, hey, is it okay? Can I go ahead and publish my video? But generally, if you ask for folks to review, the training team reps will bring it up in the meeting and they'll get someone to review. So you will generally get at least 1 or 2 reviews on your lesson content. Okay. Then the next step is to create lesson subtitles and lesson transcripts. The reason for this is that all lessons, I'm going to go there quickly now, all lessons on Learn WordPress that are published on Learn WordPress have to have lesson subtitles. Let's open up a lesson here very quickly. So when we publish a lesson, we have the lesson video at the top. We have the transcript at the bottom, but we also have, I'm going to play it, but turn the volume down. We also have them available as subtitles on the video. So this makes it easy for anybody to watch this who can't hear it clearly or whatever the case may be. So that is a requirement for lessons to be published. There are a number of pieces of software that you can use. There is Otter AI, there is Sonic AI, there's something called Mac Whisper on a Mac OS computer. We do have I think it's an Otter AI account that the training team has, an Otter AI account that you can use. You just need to reach out to one of the training team reps and ask them to help you with that. But you do need to create the WordPress TV subtitle videos for it to be uploaded to WordPress TV. Okay, so now we've got all the pieces together. The next step is to get this thing published. Before we dive into that, I'm going to take another short break and give time if there are any questions. So if you have any questions about that process, now's a great time to ask them. Otherwise, we'll very quickly in the next 15 minutes go through the how do I get this thing to process. While I wait, I'm going to close a whole bunch of tabs. I say Rico has a question on translations. So Rico, I'm going to answer your question by saying that to the best of my knowledge, and anybody from the training team can correct me on this, There are currently no specific minimum requirements for something to be translated for it to be published. So when the original lesson is created, it's recommended to do it English and then publish it with subtitles. When it comes to translation, the minimum requirements, I understand, is it needs to be translated by one person and reviewed by another person. So one person needs to review the created translated version and say, we're happy with this. And those are, as far as I know, the minimum requirements. If I'm wrong, somebody is welcome to let me know. But it would be a good idea, I would say, for the training team to perhaps work with the polyglots team and maybe put together some minimum requirements there. One of the quickest ways you can translate a lesson video is to translate the subtitle. So you can download the English subtitle and translate it to whatever language you speak and then get that uploaded. That's a quick one. Translating an entire video is a conversation that Rico and I have had a number of discussions about. Sometimes the timing is out. Sometimes you have to recreate the whole video. That's a conversation that I don't have answers to because I don't speak a different language. But it does require you to have sort of the same content creation chops, if you will, as somebody doing a brand new lesson. There is a how-to guide around translating. I think it is. Yeah, here we go. There is the how-to guide on content translation. So I'm going to share that in the chat as well if you want to read up about that. But that is the basic process of how it works. Okay. Then let's move on to, let me go back to the handbook. Back to lessons. Now let's go to the uploading your video process. So the uploading your video process requires a couple of different things. First and foremost, your video needs to be uploaded to WordPress TV. So you use the same form that WordPress TV uses to upload videos. It has a title, a language, the date recorded, location you leave as World Wide Web, category you leave as Learn WordPress and Learn WordPress online workshops. You will see that that's set by default from the link. And then, oh no, sorry, I lied. It's not set by default from the link. I have a script that runs that sets those things, but your location is always World Wide Web. Your category is always Learn WordPress and not online workshops. In our case, just Learn WordPress. You put in your WordPress username as the producer, and then whoever is this and then you put in a description. So you put in a description for the video. Someone says, did it lock for you? I'm not sure what you mean there, Velda. Okay, but all good now? Okay, excellent. So as I was saying, you put in your username, in the speaker's name, the person speaking on the video. If it's yourself, you put your name. You leave the event clear, and then you put in a description. So generally what I put in as the description is, I'm going to have to find a lesson now. So let's go back to, now I've gone and closed all those GitHub issues, didn't I? No, that's not the one I want. Let's go find, let's say action hooks is a good one. That's going to be closed. And let's just go removing hooks. I actually saw something now that we can go back to in a second. So then I will use either the details or the learning objectives, and I'll craft a description on that for the video. It's not super important for getting it published on Learn WordPress, but it's useful for WordPress TV folks if somebody's finding it there. You can then also add the link to the slides URL. So if there are slides in the lesson video, add those. I usually just add the public link to the Google Sites, and then you choose the file and you upload it. Once the video is uploaded, you will need to ask, and I think Nilo is still in the chat somewhere, or maybe he's left. You'll need to ask somebody from the WordPress TV team to publish it for you if you don't already have those permissions. Side note, this is a great way to get involved in the WordPress TV team. So if you start contributing to getting your videos there, you become part of the WordPress TV team as well. You can join their channel and chat to them about that. So I highly recommend chatting to Nilo about that. But it's a great way to get your WordPress TV contributor badge as well. Once the lesson is published, what then happens is it automatically gets auto-published to the WordPress YouTube channel. And it's the WordPress YouTube link we need to use to learn WordPress video. And I'll explain to you why in a second. But we do also have a series of playlists that we were using for the learning pathways. I'm probably not going to find them now, but no, there's WordCamp Asia. There's a Learn WordPress one. Here's the theme developer ones, for example. So it's a good idea, based on what course you're working in, it's a good idea to add it to the playlist for that course to make sure that they're all together. Adding it to the playlist currently is something that is controlled by the folks in the marketing team. So if you need things changed there, you will need to reach out to them. But adding it to the playlist is not a hard requirement now. It will get automatically published, so you might need to wait a couple of days and just check on the YouTube channel to grab the link for the video. I see Mohibul says he has access to WordPress TV, so he can help with those videos. Great, that's awesome. Thank you. Then once you have the YouTube link and your subtitles and all of that kind of thing, you need to then create the lesson on Learn WordPress. So essentially what that is that's going into Learn WordPress. I'll show you that process now quickly. So you'll need to access to Learn WordPress, or you'll need to ask one of the folks who do have access to this for you. You'll go into the CMS courses. You'll find the course that this lesson belongs to. So I think the ones we're looking at now, intermediate designer, was that? No, it was intermediate plugin developer. That's right. And generally, the course line is created on the course landing page. So you'll just need to then find your lesson in the list and add the content to it. Now, I see there's some lessons that are coming here, project translations. Once you click on the lesson, you can say edit lesson. And that'll take you to the edit lesson screen. And then you can simply add your YouTube video embed. And below that, a copy of the lesson transcripts, either from the subtitles or the transcript that you created, or your script, which is another reason why I do my script first. Then I can just copy paste it here. The reason we use YouTube for the videos is, number one, the subtitles work better. I don't say work better, have the whole like YouTube thing that can have multiple subtitles. They also have the option for ads, and you'll notice in the section on uploading your video, it talks about, I forgot about this, it talks about adding your chapter markers to the YouTube video, so that then when somebody's watching the video on Learn WordPress, then they can see the chapters. And the other thing is we have better analytics of the YouTube videos for things like watch time and how many people are watching it and that kind of thing. So that's one of the reasons why we switched over to embedding the videos from YouTube. Once that's done, if you do have permission to publish the lesson, you can go ahead and publish it. If you don't, then you will need to get somebody who does have permission to just review it and publish the lesson for you. And the end result is that you end up with a lesson created on Learn WordPress, belonging to the correct course, with the YouTube video, with the detailed transcript, subtitles embedded, nice thumbnail. Oh, that was the one thing I forgot. You do need to create a thumbnail. I didn't see it in the list yet, but somewhere here it does talk about creating the thumbnail. I think it's in the upload your video section, maybe. No, maybe it's, see if I've got this. There's a section about the thumbnail. Maybe it's in the creating lesson tasks, maybe. I can't remember where it is, but it's somewhere in here. It talks about creating a thumbnail. There's a whole process for that. I apologize. I can't remember where that is now. Oh, here we go. Create graphics. Here we go. Create graphics in the creating a lesson section. So we do have a Figma thumbnail generator. If you've worked on any of the thumbnail projects, you'll know about this tool. So this allows you to create your thumbnail so that it looks nice like this. It looks like a Learn WordPress site. And your final result is your lesson is done and published. And then last but not least, you need to come back to your lesson and mark it as published so that somebody else doesn't come along and try and work on the lesson. So you can do that. There is a publish action that you can run, / publish, and that'll mark the lesson as closed and published, and then you can move on to the next one. And that, in a nutshell, in roughly 50 minutes, is the general process of doing this. It can look daunting the first time you try it. I do recommend taking your time. Don't try and rush it. But once you get into the program, once you understand how it all works, it does become a lot easier. And as always, you can join the trade channel and you can ask questions while you're there if you get stuck at any point along the way. All right, that's my bit. Does anybody else have any questions or anything they want to know about this process? We've got 5 minutes left very quickly. No, it's fine. Not a problem. No problem being late. We are recording this, so we will share it afterwards. You can watch it all there. The other thing that I will say, if nobody has any questions, is that, let me get back to meetup.com. No problem. It's very difficult to break down everything in 1 hour. But the 2 tips that I want to share with you is, number one, read through the lessons section of the training team handbook. So that has everything to finish, the whole process, everything I've just discussed here, stuff I've forgotten to discuss, it's all there. If you haven't as well, I also recommend the Getting Started guide and reading through the content creator onboarding, because that talks about the whole process, and that'll get you the places you need to go. Chris says, who has access to the Sensei LMS? That is generally on a case-by-case basis. Mohib will correct me if I'm wrong here, but generally, if folks are interested and keen to create content, we have a content creator onboarding process. Generally, once you go through that process and we see that you are wanting to create content and you're creating good content and all that kind of thing, we will generally give folks access to Sensei. Generally, what we do in the beginning is we will give folks access to be able to create content, but not publish it, so that we can review it first and make sure it all looks good. Just like when you're committing code to core, someone has to review your PR. And then once we can see somebody has done it a few times and their content looks great every time, then we might switch them over to the ability to be able to just publish on their own. Moibel says, is there a recommended time frame or time limit for video length? That's a great question. In the lessons handbook, we do talk about that. I can't remember exactly where it is, though. It might be under the creating a lesson section. The training team is here to help. If you get stuck, ask. I know we do. Yes, here we go. Under the record and edit your lesson section, we say aim for your lesson to be between 5 to 10 minutes in length. Shorter videos can be more engaging, easier to follow for viewers. However, depending on the topic, you might find that sometimes you go over that 10 minutes. If it's warranted, if it makes sense to maybe go over that 10 minutes by a few minutes, I would say that's okay. I definitely have a few videos that are, I don't know how long this one is. This one is 5 minutes, but I do have a few videos in this sort of more advanced section that kind of go over that 10-minute time frame. So on a case-by-case basis, but try and keep it under 10 minutes if you can. Moibel says, if I want to convert an existing English course into a local language course, do I need to use the same slides and script, or can I create my own script and presentation? That's a great question. And that's a conversation that Rico and I have had a number of times. I would say that there isn't a hard and fast rule about whether you have to use the same slides and script or not. If it's the same content, I would say you should be allowed to tweak the content or the script, because depending on where we are in the world, how you describe things, how you pronounce things would be very different. As long as you don't deviate too far away from the content, I think that's fine. I would also say that in my ideal world, there would be a different language version of every single English lesson that exists on Learn WordPress. So I would recommend, if you do speak a language other than English, a great way to start creating content is to take an existing lesson that is already there, that you have knowledge of, that you feel comfortable with, and recreate it in a language that you speak. as some of you might know, we are currently in the process of testing a plugin called Polylang to be able to allow us to serve multilingual content. And once we have, it's been going for a while now, but once we get to a point in time where we have this plugin installed and we can use it, we need multi-language content. So if that's where you want to get started, translating existing lessons, recreating them in whatever language you speak, I would highly recommend it. Okay, great question. So Seidel says, is it allowed to use or show any theme and plugin while describing any topic? Great question. In the handbook, under resources, I'm going to share the link in the chat. We have a brand usage guidelines. And in the brand usage guidelines, we specifically talk about the fact that how we recommend or mention brands within Learn WordPress content. So brands can be included if they are relevant to the piece of content. For example, if you're doing a lesson on SEO, you can mention SEO plugins. But those brands must respect the WordPress trademark and not misuse it, and embrace the WordPress license. Additionally, plugins and themes can only be included if there is a version of their product that is hosted on the WordPress.org plugin or theme directory. And it is recommended to mention at least 2 or 3 options. So for example, if you're building a course on e-commerce on WordPress, you can't just build it on WooCommerce. You need to include 2 or 3 other options. Or memberships. You can't just say paid memberships pro. You need to use 2 or 3 other options. So you'll see there it does say for practical reasons, in some cases, it may be appropriate to have a lesson that is focused on a single theme and plugin. In those instances, the content must be clear about the purpose and can only cover plugins that are hosted on the theme or plugin directory. So there's a whole thing around the guidelines. If you want to do it on specific plugins or themes, I do recommend reading that. Good question. Valda says has to run. Bye, Valda. When we are reviewing as a reviewer, what things to check to ensure quality? Great question. There is a reviewing document that dives into that. I'm going to try and find it here. Guidelines for reviewing content. Here we go. So it's all in the handbook. I'm going to share this with you in there. But essentially, it's basically, are the outcomes and achievement objectives clear? Is it technically accurate? Is it easy to follow and understand? Does the talking match the slide demonstration? Are spelling and grammar correct? Can I hear it clearly? So like earlier, we had sound issues. Are the brand usage guidelines and the promotional guidelines being followed? And are the media assets licensed in a way that we can reuse them? So those are the main guides. And so there's suggestions for how to review. There's a whole list so you just go through that list and check it off. But those are the guidelines that we have in the handbook. All right, folks, we are 3 minutes over time now, so I'm going to have to call. If there are any other questions around this, as I mentioned earlier, in the meetup event, there is a GitHub issue. I'm going to share it again in the Slack. Please do feel free to post any questions there. I will leave this GitHub issue open for 2 weeks, the 2-week review period. So in fact, even if it's closed, sorry, my screen just did a weird thing. I hope you're all still there. Even if I close it after 2 weeks and you're watching this a month from now on WordPress TV, feel free to come back and post questions there. I will answer them. You're also welcome to ping me in Slack. What I would suggest you do is at me in the training channel with your questions, so that when I answer them, other folks can see the answers as well. I'm happy to answer questions at any time. The only thing I will say is I can't answer them immediately because I'm often off doing other things, but I will always answer questions that people ask. Eric says, what is the revenue for making tutorials for WordPress? That depends, Eric. There is no money paid if you create lessons for Learn WordPress, unless you are able to get sponsored by a company. And a number of folks have been able to do that, but this is an open source project. So if you're offering to do it, you're volunteering your time. So unless you can find sponsorship, but there's no direct revenue per lesson to create it for WordPress.org. Okay, folks, thank you so much for your time. Thank you all for joining me. Again, if you have questions, share them in that GitHub issue or ping me in Slack. I'm always around somewhere. Enjoy the rest of your day and your afternoon or your morning or wherever you are in the world. And I'll see you around the WordPress training team Slack. Bye-bye.